Hello and welcome to Channel's Book Club. My name is Olakunle Kasumo, and it's always great to be on this show where we discuss all things books. Well, our first guest for today has written a fascinating book, one that I consider to be very, very important, and it has an intriguing title. No Child is Dull. Have you ever come across parents and teachers who, because they are disappointed by the results of their children, tell them they are dull or they are not smart enough or they are not good enough or all sorts of negative things? Well, our author today has written a book that speaks to parents, teachers, decision makers, policy makers, and everybody in society. And his message is strong and consistent in that book. No child is dull. Every child has potential, great potential, and we only have to learn how to tap the best from every child out there. Well, let's get to meet with him and enjoy the conversation we had exploring his book.
Kola Okolo is a Nigerian-British educationist and an author. Okolo has a qualified teacher status, QTS, from the Institute of Education, University College London, and a Master of Education in Educational Leadership from the University of Buckingham. He has been an educationist for over 2 decades, having taught in secondary schools and colleges across London, Leatherhead and Milton Keynes in the UK. Okolo has trained and mentored teachers in England and Africa. He joins Channel's Book Club to discuss his book, No Child is Dull.
Kola, it's great to have you on Channel's Book Club.
Thank you, Kunle. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. You're based in London, right?
Yes.
How is London now?
Yeah, it's winter, very cold. Massive difference coming into Nigeria, obviously, with the difference in weather. Yeah, but London is all right,
It's okay.
Yes.
All right, great. But you are from Delta State, right?
Yes. Originally, I am from Delta State, from Ukwani local government to be precise.
I like the way you pronounce that correctly.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, we don't have so much time, Kola. Your book is fascinating.
Thank you.
Right from the title, it just caught my attention. No child is dull. And I like the fact that you put an exclamation mark there to emphasize, it's an emphatic statement. No child is dull. Can you talk about what inspired that title and inspired the book?
Thank you, Kunle. From what you said, that exclamation mark, I've done it for emphasis because I needed to pass on that message that no child is actually truly dull. Now, what really inspired that title was, I decided to think about a niche in terms of the whole educational system in Nigeria, especially with provision for people with learning needs. Now, I train teachers, and I've been to Nigeria, in different times. I've been around so many states to train teachers. Now, there is a dearth of provision for students with identified learning needs. And I'm talking about learning needs within mainstream schools. So I'm not talking about special schools, because I know they do have some special schools that look after people like, autistic children or dyslexic children, but we're talking about mainstream schools. Now, in my travels, in my trainings, it's very clear, very obvious that there's absolutely no provision. So I got thinking, and I thought, what I wanted to write, I had to think about the audience. Who is this book going to be for? And why is this book going to be for those particular people? Then I equally thought about the content. What is actually going to be in this book? And then I thought about the readability. Is it going to be accessible? Can the average reader, can it comprehend the content? Can they assimilate? And more importantly, can they internalize the content of the book? Now, knowing the central theme, which is all about inclusion, the principles of inclusion, I then began to think about having gone past the principle of inclusion, I wanted a title, I wanted a book that would actually connect or trigger some sort of emotional response in a reader. And I did stumble upon, I had a title in mind. I think I called it Every Child Can Learn.
Mhm.
And, I had that title ongoing. I was writing the book and I thought, you know what, I needed to research the genre of that book to see if anybody or any book had that kind of title. I carried out research, and yes, there were some titles along those lines. All children could learn, every child can learn. And then I left it for a while, and this was during COVID, so I had the time to actually think. I had that space to, critically think. And then I came up with No Child is Dumb, DUMB. And, in certain context, dumb would connote deafness or hard of hearing. And I didn't want the title to be lost in translation. So eventually, I had a bit of an inspiration, a light bulb moment, and it was Eureka.
Eureka.
No child is dull. And I thought about that emphasis because, for most part of it, in my journey, Kunle, you see, teachers around here, because they're not really aware about how to take care of students with identified learning needs. They typically drive to a conclusion if a child cannot access the content of the curriculum on offer. They just go, you're dumb, you're stupid. And I wanted to challenge that misconception, but more importantly, to remove the stigmatization of children with identified learning needs within mainstream education.
Kola, this is big for me. I mean, massive, really big, very important. No child is dull. What you're talking about now is a major issue that I've personally observed. I don't have empirical data like you probably have. I don't have the kind of experiences you probably have. But just from general observation, we are too quick to conclude that a child is dull. And it's not just a teacher problem. It's also a parent problem, parental issue.
Yes.
Parents and teachers are too quick to conclude that a child is dull simply because the child is not bringing home the kinds of results that the parents expect or the teachers expect.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're saying. And you have now pointed out that many children have learning needs that teachers are not even aware of.
Yeah.
And unless we're aware of those needs, we can't tackle those needs.
Yeah.
And if we can't tackle those needs, we get the results that we usually get. And then we conclude that the child is dull.
Yeah.
Is that a good summary?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, Kunle. You see, to digress a little bit, the book is actually not just for teachers. Well, primarily it is for teachers, but also for parents, like you rightly said. Because like I said in the beginning, there's a dearth of understanding. There's a lack of knowledge around children with learning needs. Our teachers lack the necessary training. So it's not really their fault. No one's taught them. Within their education, of their trainings, they don't have any provision for children in mainstream school with identified learning needs.
Underline mainstream school.
Mainstream school, and also same for parents as well. And this is where this book is absolutely essential. It's actually desperately needed. And that's the word, desperately needed. They don't know they need it, but they desperately need it. Because this book covers the principles, the core principles of inclusion, right? For each identified learning need, there is a corresponding strategy to help remove that need, that barrier. Now, if a child is not making progress, right, that's usually a barrier in front of that child. Now, that barrier can be visible or invisible. It's up to the practitioner, the parents, the teachers to identify that barrier. Because if you identify the barrier, let me go with what's in the book. You have to know that child. That's the first step. If you know that child, in terms of getting all the data about that child, it might be behavior data, parents' views or guardian or carers, the child's experiences. It could be some progress report. Know that child.
Know the student you wrote here.
Absolutely. You know that student, that child.
Then identify the barrier.
Identify the barrier. What is stopping that child from accessing the curriculum and offer. Now, once you've identified it, because as you know, a problem stated is half solved. Once you've identified it, the next step is then to come up with bespoke, and I use that word bespoke, customized, prescriptive, and personalized strategy, because each child is different. We're going to treat them differently. So within education, it's more about equity rather than equality, because everybody is different. So you come up with bespoke strategy because you know what the barrier is. Now, I know what strategy to remove that particular barrier, that peculiar barrier. Now, I implement, and that's the penultimate step in that book. You implement that strategy. Now, you don't just implement and leave it. You've got to monitor it. You've got to support it. Make sure that that strategy is actually working. Like everything else in life, there is a point where you then review the whole process. Now, it's got to be cyclical. So at that point, you come up with the whole thing. You know what? I've implemented it. Has it really worked? If it hasn't worked, you go back to the drawing board, you change tack, and you start all over again. Now, the book runs through sections. So the first section talks about students with disabilities. Now, these are people or students that either have physical or sensory needs. And as a result of their needs, they're unable to cope in normal education without getting special education needs support. Now, the second part is a really key one that people don't generally talk about. Now, when we talk about special needs, we're thinking about people also that are at risk, children that are at risk, out of school children. They are presenting a problem as well. Now, I've shared this before, and depending on where you get your information from, if you go to UNESCO's website, they would claim that in Nigeria, there are 20 million children that are out of school. Now, you go to UNICEF's website, they would claim that there are about 10.5 million children that are out of school. Now, these children, when they do go back to school, and you're trying to reintegrate them into normal education, remember, these children, you've got children from like nomadic pastoralists. These are nomads. They move from place to place in search of pastures for their animals. And as a result of that, the children do not normally have, a regular, conventional education. You've got hunters, children from hunters society, migrant fisherfolk families. Now, because of their lifestyle and their means of livelihood, those children are not getting conventional education, if they're getting any, anyways. Now, because they're not getting any, right, it becomes special needs because we need to meet their particular and peculiar needs. So they do need support when they come back into school. We need to equip our teachers to know how to support them because there will be lots of gaps in their knowledge. These children normally, typically, cannot access the curriculum and offer, so they do require special support. Now, the last bit there, again, as a teacher for years, for decades, we tend to always look at those that are struggling. We tend to look at those with learning needs. But there are some students that are very capable.
Gifted children.
Gifted and talented. These people, they have high IQ, intelligent quotient. They're naturally endowed with, unique traits. For example, in arts, in leadership, intellectual precocity, psychomotor prowess. Now, these people as well, if you're not really challenging, you're not stretching them, right? You'd find that if you're not really challenging them sufficiently as regards pace and the curriculum, you're going to leave them behind as well. So they do need support as well in that regard. Yes.
Oh, well, Kola, we are out of time right now. But like I promised, and we have to come back to this. Absolutely.
Yes.
Have to come back to this, and we will come back to this.
There's a lot to talk about.
I wanted you to speak about those learning needs and the types of learning needs, but they're all in this book.
Yes.
And I hope viewers will get, copies of your book. Easily obtainable, right?
Yes, it is. It is obtainable. It's
Amazon.
It's on Amazon. Absolutely correct.
All that.
Correct.
Thank you, Kola. Thank you for joining us on Channels Book Club. We will definitely put on our social media handles those who are interested in getting the book. We'll direct them where to get.
Thank you for having me.
This is absolutely important for Nigeria.
Yes.
Teachers, lawmakers, policymakers, everybody out there, parents, we need to pay attention to this because we have millions of children who could have a great future if we understand the subject.
Yes, because when we transform learning, Kunle, we transform lives.
Yeah.
And truly, no child is dull.
No child is dull. Thank you, Kola. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that. It is so important. Indeed, no child is dull. And we're going to be talking to Kola again very soon. So you might want to look out for that. There's a young lady who is about to crush a Guinness Book of World Record for reading. She's all prepped up and she's all ready. What we find fascinating is she's young, she's still in the university, but she's doing great things in terms of championing literacy in the city of Benin, in Edo, and ultimately she wants to do that all over Nigeria and the continent of Africa. I'm talking about no other person than Angel Osariemen. She's doing a reading exercise that will break the world record for reading, and everybody in Edo State very excited about this. One of the things Angel is doing is she's promoting this big time. She's really going out there to promote it because for her, it's not just about reading to break the record. It's about using it as a platform to inspire reading and literacy all over Edo State. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on her efforts and we'll be keeping you updated on that. Up next, people say, we don't read, Nigerians don't read. Well, Nigerians do write great books and some of them stand out. I mean, exceptionally. And we have two of those writers who have just launched their books. One of them we've had on the show before. You've met him before. You will see very soon that you've met him before. The other one, we've never had him on this show, but we're excited and looking forward to having him on the show very, very soon. He'll be joining us at the studio to explore his new book. Well, let's get to enjoy the launches of these two very important books written by two fascinating authors. Enjoy them.
It's the official launch of Tunde Ekpekorede's second and newest book. However you tell it, it is still a story you made up. Ekpekorede, a facilitator, speaker, and coach, in his new book, writes on the difference between an event and a story to help readers understand the power and relevance of perception in everyday experiences and the battles of life. In his keynote address, the former Lagos Commissioner of Economic Planning and Budget, Samuel Egube, goes down memory lane by speaking on the unique attributes of the author, associating them to the eye-opening facts readers will come across when they read the book.
The author has significant amount of history. He's gone through what I will call ups and what I will call downs. And if there's anybody that can tell you that the story you are telling about yourself in your up are stories you made up for yourself, he has the right to be able to tell that story. It's important that we begin to tell stories that support our cause. You will find stories in your life that are true, but if they do not support your cause, go and read this book.
The book reviewer, Titi Oyemade, a columnist and publisher, speaks on the unique nature of the book.
This book's long title, however you tell it, is still a story that you made up, might either attract a prospective reader or distract the reader. Yet, the curiosity sparked by this very title is likely to entice any potential reader, ultimately prompting them to pick up the book.
The author gives a breakdown of the book and encourages guests at the launch to tell stories that will create possibilities.
When I see people talk about hard times, good times, but the truth is, what I've come to find out, what you call hard times, good times, is the story that you came up with. If you made that story, you cannot make it. Stories are vehicles by which we navigate life. Now, we need to tell a story on how we will move from point A to B. But here is the good thing. When you find out that I am the one, in chapters 18 and 19, now it talks about how that look. What you ascribe meaning to, in itself, it has no meaning. If you want to be happy in life, create the stories that will support that happiness.
And to the focal order of the event.
Please put your hands together as you unveil the book. However you tell it, it is still a story you made up by Sunday Secretary. You can start better.
Having read his first book, Realizing Mental Resilience, participants at the book launch who were familiar with the author bear their minds on the new one.
The book actually opened my eyes to a lot of things. So many things have actually held us down in bondage are things we made up. They are not realities. That a man failed in one thing does not mean failure is a part of his life.
I've read the book, and the book is quite inspiring. And I will say for anyone at any point in your life, you have a lot to learn from this book. One of the chapters of the book that talks about starting a business and having no money. In fact, I was reading one of the chapters, and all the ideas that he shared in that chapter, I immediately started implementing them.
The author, who is passionate about leadership development and executive coaching, explains the motive behind his second book.
When I found out that my own limitations were embedded in stories that I told, so the passion and desire to help people get out of their own stories. Depression is from stories you tell. Now, I want to help you retell the stories. I want to help you get rid of every pain. Now, there is not one single pain that what this book encapsulates will not get rid of.
However you tell it, it is still a story you made up, is a 215-page book focused largely on how to win the battles of life.
There is something abroad to the executive of law.
Governors, bankers, and dignitaries from various fields of life are gathered here to launch Ademola Adebishe's memoir, The Transformational Leader, The Journey of a Tech Bro turned Bank CEO. Adebishe is the immediate past managing director and chief executive officer of Wema Bank PLC. During his tenure as the CEO, Adebishe, who was able to comfortably complement his tech knowledge with his banking skills, pioneered one of Africa's first fully digital banks, Alat.
His appearance to me struck as a complete gentleman, very humble, very respectful, and very, very knowledgeable.
Demola was an accomplished programmer and systems analyst, an astute banking administrator with a legacy of innovation, as we've all heard. And it is for this reason that this book that we're launching today is very noteworthy.
Adebishe, while explaining why he wrote the book, discusses who his target audience are.
I conceived writing this memoir while in the thick of the transformation efforts in my early days at Wema Bank. I started the book project exactly 1 year ago while I was on terminal vacation from Wema Bank. Why did I embark on this journey? Firstly, I felt compelled to document our collective achievements, share the lessons learned, and underscore the importance of perseverance and adaptability. The story needed to be told and documented as to be a valuable resource to aspiring leaders on this trajectory.
Friends and families of the new author also bear their minds.
He's a consummate gentleman, he's a brilliant banker, and he's someone that takes care of his people. The event we're here for today is just a chronicle of his life from when he started his career. And I think it's very good. He's detailed it out very lucidly. I will recommend the book to those coming behind so that they know that whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, the mind of man can achieve.
He's a very detailed person. He gives 100% attention and commitment to anything committed to it, and Demola doesn't do anything halfway.
The transformational leader, the journey of a tech bro turned bank CEO, is an account of Adebishe's early and professional life as an information technology expert and a consummate banker.
This is where we have to end the show today. As always, we'll be delighted to get your feedback through any of our social media platforms displayed on your screen. My name is Olakunle Kasumo. Remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.